Tempo sessions can and should play a significant role in any endurance training program. So it's time to clear up what they are and how to use them. Tempo sessions can and should play a significant role in any endurance training program. It's time to clear up exactly what they are and how you can use them. Tempo is, by definition, the rate or speed of an activity. Tempo is pace. So how can tempo be a pace? Every run has a pace. So how can tempo be a pace? Well, it should probably more accurately be called up tempo or good tempo for running. It's just been abbreviated down to tempo running. It's kind of zone 3 running. So that is 90 to 94% of your lactate threshold heart rate, or 80 to 90% of your max heart rate. To give a word to it, it is steady state or steady speed. So you're working quite hard, but you're not working really hard. It's below your threshold intensity, but it's not easy. A 6 to 7 out of 10, if that helps. It shouldn't be, but sometimes is confused with threshold effort. The threshold effort is where your body starts to accumulate lactic acid and things start to hurt. Tempo is easier than that, but only just. It's still going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt that much. Runners tend to describe it as comfortably uncomfortable. I know, runners are weird. Most beginners don't need to be told to do tempo runs. Because of those factors I just described, it feels like you're working, but you can sustain the pace. It's where most beginners end up if they're just left to their own devices. But just because it's the hardest pace you can sustainably run, it doesn't mean it's the pace you should run. In fact, it may be the opposite. You see, if you always run tempo pace, you will always be too tired to run a good threshold session or even an anaerobic session and really push your speed up and your aerobic system to its limits. And on the other side of the equation, if you never run slow and easy, that pace will become uncomfortable and unsustainable, and then you won't be able to do really long runs at slow paces. You become stuck in something of a tempo rut. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with running at tempo pace. It does work your aerobic system and you will get fitter. But if you want to be a complete runner, you need to work all of your systems, and always run at tempo pace doesn't do that. We'll give you some actual tempo sessions you can follow at the end of this video, but how you build your tempo session into your training should be done carefully. We'd suggest that for most runners, one tempo session a week is about right, or maybe even alternating your tempo session 1 week with a speed session the next week, so only doing a tempo session every 2 weeks. This is just about the right amount to really push that aerobic system without spending too much time in that tempo zone. So should all runners do tempo pace sessions? Actually, probably yes, but it's going to be more important for some runners than for others. Marathon and half marathon runners do need to spend quite a lot of time doing tempo sessions. In fact, elite half marathon runners will pretty much spend the whole race in that tempo zone, so it's their race pace. But even if your pace for a marathon or half is slower, you still should do quite a few tempo runs because it provides quite a good aerobic conditioning base. If you're training for a 5K or a 10K, then tempo sessions are a bit below your race pace. However, they're still a very important part of your training because of that aerobic conditioning. It's slower than your race pace, but because it doesn't take so much out of you, you can do a bit more of it and spend a bit more time in that zone and really get those aerobic boosts. And tempo running is a great gateway back into speed work. If you've had a break from injury or whatever and you haven't done speed work for a while, or you've just never done speed work before, tempo running is a great way to get the blood pumping and the body working hard and get you ready for those speed sessions that are to come in the future. This leaves us with the question of, what does a tempo session actually look like? Most people will be comfortable running 20 to 30 minutes in that tempo zone, and a tempo session will generally include between 15 and 40 minutes of tempo zone running. Although seasoned runners can really increase this, and sometimes you'll see them doing up to 15 to 25 kilometers of tempo running in a single session. But it doesn't need to all be in one go. You can break it up and still get the benefits. Here are some example sessions of what a tempo session might look like for different levels of runner. An introduction session would be a 10-minute warm-up, and then 2 to 4 by 1 mile at tempo pace with about 60 seconds very easy jog recovery, and then 10 minutes cool down. So a total of 4 miles in that tempo zone. A classic session would be a very simple 10 minutes easy, 20 minutes at tempo pace, and another 10 minutes easy. And if you're training for a marathon or even an ultra marathon, your tempo session might look like a 10-minute warm-up, 20 minutes at that tempo zone, 10 minutes easy, another 20 minutes at the tempo zone, and then a 10-minute cool down. I think you get an idea from those sessions of how you can incorporate tempo running into your training. You can do long intervals, sometimes really long intervals at tempo running, much longer than you do at other paces. However, you don't have to do them as one continuous long run, because the occasional break where you take a little rest allows you to spend more time at that tempo zone and get more benefit from the training. So are you someone who, until you watch this video anyway, always ran at tempo pace? Or do you just dip in occasionally when you need a good solid hit out? Or have you never tried tempo running? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching and happy running.